Hello, Year 7. So, this lesson we are going to be thinking about medieval church and religion in medieval England. So, hopefully, by the end of this lesson, all of us are going to be able to describe the role of the church in the medieval period using some keywords. Most of us are going to be able to explain the role of the church in medieval society and assess its importance in people's lives. And some of us are even going to be able to evaluate the importance of the church using evidence to support statements and beliefs. So, normally, if we were in school, I would be getting you to do this on your own and then I would help you with it. So, this one already has a little bit of help on it. If you can read that terrible writing on there, that is mine. Sorry, guys. So, it says, "What does the church do today?" in the middle, and you're going to make a mind map of what the church does today for people. So, there's lots of things around there to help you with it. Pause the video, give yourself 5 minutes. Okay, so you should have a nice mind map of things that the church does today. Now we're going to be thinking about what the church in medieval society did. Okay, so if you pause the video now and give yourself 5 minutes to make a mind map using these pictures to help you, and then I'll go through the answers. So you should have already written down some of these ideas that you've got. But on this image, you've got all sorts of different things. So, starting in the top left, you've got obviously weddings and funerals, were a thing that the medieval church was responsible for. Moving around, you have got schooling and education. People learned from the church. People learned to read and write there if they were lucky. The majority didn't, though. Um, the Red Cross is there to symbolize healthcare. The church provided some kind of healthcare in that for a very long time, people believed that if you were sick, it was because you had either done something to upset God or it was God's will that you should be, and therefore the only solution was to pray. And so churches offered that kind of healthcare. They also offered somewhere for sick people to go. So they were a kind of hospital, but without so many of the treatments. They were also a place for old people to be cared for, so they looked after the old as well as the sick. They were a place for farmers to store things. They were responsible for justice. That's what those scales in the bottom left hand of the screen represent. So, if somebody committed what was believed to be a crime, the church would decide what that punishment would be. And the church at this time and for a very long time was very, very wealthy because they were responsible for collecting tithes, which were like taxes paid to the church. Now, the whole reason the church was able to do this was because of some of the kind of key, most basic beliefs that people had about religion. And the big one being that if you did good things, you would go to heaven, and if you did bad things, you would go to hell. In this image, you can see some of those beliefs. So I've labeled some of the things in here. This is taken from the side of a church building, and you can see devils and demons and saints guarding this ladder into heaven. So this image comes from Bath Abbey, which was rebuilt during the medieval period in 1499. The parts that you have been looking at reminded people how important the church was, and everyone understood that they needed to obey the church in order to get into heaven. So part of actually the reason, just to stay on this for a second, part of the reason for building these huge church buildings was also to show how powerful the church was. This would have been the biggest building in that area for miles and miles and miles, and it was a statement of how powerful the church was. And it was, again, that reminder of the church gets to decide whether you go to heaven or hell. So you are going to do as many of these questions as you can in the next 7 minutes. So set yourself a timer for 7 minutes. If you can do questions 1 and 2, that's brilliant. If you get onto question 3, that's absolutely amazing. So you're describing what you can see in the source, then you are explaining what does the source tell you about medieval ideas, and then there's a challenge, which is to use examples from the image to explain what the message was that this was giving to people. Pause the video now, give yourself 7 minutes. Okay, so you should have had a go at those ones now. Next thing, we're going to try and match up some of these words. So if there's any that you're not sure on, what you can do is you can write out the definition and leave a